Have you ever considered that your fat loss and weight loss struggles are the root cause of actually being under muscled? Some of you listening to this today may have had the goal of losing weight for the last couple of years, and some of you may have actually gained fat in the pursuit of this goal. Some of you may have found success earlier on, but now you're either stuck or maybe you're seeing your progress reverse. Wherever you may be on the spectrum of I'm tired of all this extra weight and I need to get rid of it as soon as possible, I'm here today to offer a simple blueprint to your solution. A blueprint based on science, but provides an alternative way of thinking about fat loss. And this perspective, this blueprint, is not necessarily unique to me, but it has been overshadowed by the public's portrayal of health as being thin and the commonality and widespread acceptance of drugs like Wegovy and Ozempic have actually reinforced this portrayal of health as thin. This blueprint, simple but not necessarily intricate, helps prevent dramatic weight regain as well as help you lose weight. So here's my philosophy. To lose weight in a manner that will actually change your body composition or your muscle to fat ratio and actually change how you look and help prevent the massive regain is to approach weight loss in a similar fashion that you would approach muscle gain, but adhering to the number one principle in any fat loss endeavor, a calorie deficit. This is basically a state in which your body utilizes more energy than you consume. So basically, burn more calories than you eat. Why? Why do we need to build muscle? 1, you'll look more amazing in clothes. 2, muscle increases your resting metabolism. This means you'll burn more calories at rest, meaning you'll be able to get away with eating a couple more mandarins or tamarinds. It won't increase it a ton, but it will help. And 3, muscle is the number one storage of glycogen in the body. And this is where you should be getting excited. And that might not sound super attractive right now, but let me paint a quick picture of how and why this is important to us. Imagine you're eating sandwiches, like you're going ham, no pun intended, and you're eating like 12 Sammies a day. The carbohydrates from the bread are converted into glucose. The excess glucose, the amount that isn't used for energy, is then stored as glycogen in your liver and in your muscle cells. But guess what? Your ability to store glycogen in your muscles and is directly linked to how fit and how much muscle you have. When glycogen stores in the liver and the muscles are full due to a surplus of carbohydrates, the body shifts to another energy storage mechanism. The reason you're watching this video in the first place. Excess glucose that cannot be converted into glycogen is converted into fat through a process known as de novo lipogenesis. And that fat is stored as triglycerides in your body fat, your adipose tissue. So hopefully, if you weren't already glazing over the idea of building muscle, this example has helped pique your interest just a little bit, and you mustered up the strength to listen to me explain how we actually build muscle or how we can optimize that muscle building process. I'll try my best to boil down this intricate process into a simple formula. Okay. So, when the rate of muscle protein synthesis, the rate at which we synthesize muscle protein, is greater than muscle protein breakdown, muscle growth occurs. Muscle protein synthesis is the process by which the body builds new muscle proteins, and muscle protein breakdown is essentially the opposite of that. It's the process involving the breakdown of existing muscle protein into amino acids, and those amino acids can be used for a number of things, particularly energy when carbohydrates are low. To ensure muscle growth, we have to do the things that increase the rate of muscle protein synthesis. We can't really influence the rate of muscle protein breakdown too much besides eating protein, so we'll just focus on increasing the rate of muscle protein synthesis. So now that we got all the groundwork out of the way, let's switch around to the actual blueprint. In no particular order, because everything here is kind of important. So number 1 on the blueprint to a successful fat loss phase, prioritize and optimize protein intake. Okay? So we need to optimize protein intake because without consuming an adequate amount of protein, it is highly, highly unlikely that you will see any significant muscle growth and will likely experience muscle loss while trying to lose weight. Protein is one of the factors that will help push the muscle growth equation in your factor. It'll help raise muscle protein synthesis. Since we're in a state of caloric restriction, we'll need to eat more protein than we would had we been eating at a caloric surplus to promote the maintenance or increase in lean body mass. To promote muscle growth and retention during weight loss, protein intakes of about 2.3 to 3.1 grams per kilogram have been advocated, which is about 1.1 to 1.45 grams per pound of lean body mass. The leaner you are, the higher up on this range you should eat. For example, let's say you're about 200 pounds and 20% body fat. That means your lean mass is about 160 pounds. And based on this formula, you should be eating about 160 to 230 grams of protein a day. And then we want to separate those protein feedings by 3 to 5 hours. And that way, that should be sufficient enough to stimulate muscle protein synthesis evenly throughout the day. You also want to make sure you're getting at least 2 to 3 grams of leucine per feeding. Personally, I like to get 3.5 grams because I'm extra. And then I also recommend eating a high quality protein source. And there's tons of different ways that can measure the quality of a protein source. Usually meat, dairy, and eggs are the higher quality protein sources. Personally, I like to eat proteins that are highly bioavailable. I like to eat protein sources that have a high protein to calorie ratio. And I like to eat protein that tastes good to me. So those are my personal subjective requirements for my protein intake. Number 2, we need to prioritize resistance training, aka weightlifting. This shouldn't be a secret, but to build muscle, you have to lift weights or do calisthenics or some other form of resistance training. In almost 99% of cases, there needs to be an adequate amount of external stimuli for muscle building. Resistance training increases both muscle protein synthesis and muscle protein breakdown. Luckily for us, the rate of muscle protein synthesis is greater than that of muscle protein breakdown. So we know we have to resistance train. We have to lift weights or do something to get the muscle stimulated. So here are some general but important resistance training principles you'll have to incorporate to increase your chances of successfully transforming your body. First one up is training volume. Let's agree to define training volume as the number of hard sets done per week. Okay. And with that definition, you'll need about 12 and 20 hard working sets per muscle group per week. So try to fit this in however makes sense to you. So that may look like you squeezing all of these sets for your chest in during one workout, or splitting it in between 2 workouts, or even 3 workouts. And within those workouts, try to rest at least 2 minutes between sets. The idea behind this is that you want to be fresh enough to perform your next set just as good as you did your first set. All right, we don't want to be missing out on reps if we can avoid it. And the next thing is, how heavy should you lift? Light loads and heavy loads both do the trick. It may be best to use an approach that incorporates both. Finally, for the volume piece, you want to train relatively close to failure, leaving no more than 2 to 3 reps in the tank. The other factor for optimizing resistance training is progressive overload. Progressive overload is the harder than last time principle when you're resistance training. This doesn't necessarily mean you have to go harder or lift more weights than you did the previous session, but over time you can manipulate so many different variables and effectively go harder than you did maybe 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago or a month ago. It's just as long as you're increasing in some type of incremental basis. And again, that could be a number of variables, whether you're increasing the weights, the sets, the number of reps, etc. There's so many ways to do this. I prefer to just increase the weight within a predefined rep range. There are more details I'm leaving out, but I could make a video just breaking down progressive overload because it's that important of a principle. All of that to say, if you're trying to lose fat or change your body composition and actually look like you lift, train as if you're trying to build the most muscle possible. Number 3 on this blueprint is cover your nutritional basis. To optimize our ability to build muscle, it's essential to focus on obtaining an optimal amount of micronutrients. Muscle health and strength are significantly influenced by the nutrients we consume. Vitamins and minerals such as vitamin D, A, E, B6, B12, folate, and even selenium and zinc are vital for preserving muscle health. Deficiencies in these micronutrients have been linked to muscle atrophy, so muscle loss, and decreased muscle function. So at least keeping your levels of these in the recommended amounts is pretty crucial to prevent muscle loss, and if we get enough of them, they could be beneficial towards muscle growth. I recommend not taking synthetic versions of these vitamins. I rather you guys get them from Whole Foods or whole food concentrates. Number 4 on this blueprint is everyone's favorite: prioritize sleep. Before we delve into the benefits of sleep, it's crucial to understand and highlight the detriments that a lack of sleep can have on muscle growth. So hopefully this deters you from skimming your sleep. Sleep deprivation or poor sleep quality can significantly hinder your muscle building efforts. Inadequate sleep disrupts your hormonal balance. Sleep deprived individuals often experience elevated levels of stress hormones, which is also counterintuitive to what we're trying to do. Specifically cortisol. This is a catabolic hormone. When chronically elevated, it can promote muscle protein breakdown, undermining your efforts to build and maintain muscle mass. Furthermore, insufficient sleep reduces the secretion of muscle building hormones like growth hormone and even testosterone. Lack of sleep can also lead to decreased muscle performance. It leaves you with reduced energy levels, poor coordination, and decreased exercise endurance. Like, why would you lose sleep for all this? All these factors can compromise the effectiveness of your workouts, making it harder to gain weight, making it harder to stay consistent. In addition, the damaging anti-muscle effects of sleep deprivation research has shown that only one night of sleep loss is enough to drastically increase your appetite, making it more and more likely for you to eat higher calorie foods and ultimately taking you out of the calorie deficit that you need to be in to lose weight in the first place. Lack of sleep is, bar none, one of the worst things you can do for yourself. Now let's look at the positive sides. What can we do if we can sleep more? Sleep plays a pivotal role in muscle growth and muscle health. During deep restorative sleep, our bodies go through essential processes that directly facilitate muscle development, right? Basically helps muscle protein synthesis. One of the key benefits of sleep is that it's the primary period during which muscles recover and muscle growth occurs. Growth hormone, essential for muscle recovery, is predominantly released during sleep. Additionally, protein synthesis, the foundation, right, and the foundation of repair and growth, reaches its peak during our sleep. When you get enough sleep, these processes run smoothly. It prevents muscle breakdown, it promotes fast recovery, and consequently, we have enhanced muscle growth. And the last part of the blueprint, you need to track your progress and adjust different training variables accordingly. So what does that mean? Bringing it back to the big picture of this entire blueprint, we're losing fat mass by doing the things we would do to build muscle mass while eating in a calorie deficit. So we need to track the inputs necessary to get our desired output. Long-term fat loss and a body that actually reflects our hard work. That's what we want. The inputs are calories, protein, daily activity, and weekly training volume, along with whatever you want to track. It may be a little hard to track daily activity or total amount of calories burned, since the fitness trackers we do have aren't the most accurate, but at least having an idea of how many steps you're taking each day can be pretty helpful. You can track your calories and protein intake using a free tracker on the App Store. I use MyNet Diary ever since MyFitnessPal started charging for this feature. Weigh yourself. Try and compare your weekly weigh-in averages instead of looking at the day-to-day weight changes. Depending on where you're at in relation to your fitness level, some of you will have a hard time seeing the scale drop, and that's just mainly because you'll be gaining muscle and losing fat. So don't put too much onto the scale. You can track your weekly training volume by writing down your lifts in your notes app. Maybe there's a free app out there that lets you do this as well for specific exercises. I know for my clients and myself, we use the Trainerize app where I can program and see their body weight and lifts and training volume, but this app isn't free, but you could sign up as a coach and maybe put it on there for yourself. Last note on tracking: take your body measurements, take pictures, and take pictures. This is another great way to measure progress that doesn't necessarily have a one-to-one correlation with the scale, but allows you to have a semi-objective, semi-subjective way of knowing whether or not you're on the right path. So overall, this blueprint, this process, is fairly simple. And honestly, it's not the lack of this information, as I'm sure most of you know, that has led to your current situation. It's the hard part of everything I've mentioned. The hard part comes from actually doing it, execution, being able to show up every day after every setback, after an exhausting week at work, after a long stretch of downward trending emotions, after experiencing various factors that your mind has convinced you that, okay, I might be able to quit and do this next time. If you're able to push through all of that and string together a couple of weeks, days, months, then you will see results. But you have to internalize and believe that you are actually worth the effort. And that's the hard part. Last thing to ponder before I hop out of here, that'll help sum up this entire video. What if, instead of being too fat, you were just under muscled? Peace.